Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nature Source Care. My name is Dr. Fonda Goldman. I'm a naturopathic physician. And what I was going to discuss today is Ayurvedic color theory. So, this is going to be talking about Ayurveda as traditional Indian medicine and the color theory that they use to help to bring balance to life and health and that sort of thing. So, let's get into it. So, if you don't know about Ayurveda again is traditional Indian medicine, is more than 5,000 years old. And one of the main things about Ayurveda is it's an energetic paradigm of medicine. So what that means is it's quite different from the sort of biomechanical or biochemical model that's a kind of conventional Western medicine. In Ayurveda, everything is an energy of some kind. So people are different energies, diseases, symptoms are different energies, thoughts, feelings, seasons, and color, which is what we're going to talk about today, are all different energies. And so since everything's an energy, everything potentially, and especially again color today, can be used to help create a better balance for people in themselves and in their lives. Okay. So one of the main kind of concepts in Ayurveda is the concept of the three doshas, which are the three imbalances. Okay, so there are three of these. The first one is vata. Also, you can loosely translate that as wind. There's pitta, which you can loosely translate as fire, and then there's kapha, which you can loosely translate as earth. Okay, so wind, fire, and earth. Now, each of these doshas or imbalances, so when somebody has too much vata or wind, or too much pitta or fire, or too much kapha or earth, they will start to exhibit certain qualities. Okay, so if we look at vata or wind first, vata or wind is cold, it's dry, it's rough and moving. Okay, like the wind. So the cold, wind will cool things down. It'll dry things out. It's rough because it comes and goes. It's not like, oh, it's steady. And then so is like moving and churning. So the thing is, when somebody has too much vata or wind, they can experience different physical, but also mental and emotional symptoms. Okay. So on the physical plane, they can exhibit dryness, symptoms that kind of come and go, move, shift, or intermittent, kind of contraction, like they tend to get stiff, like their joints and things like that, their muscles. And they can also have like spasms and that sort of thing, and also lightness. Okay. Mental emotionally, people with too much vata or wind tend towards things like ADD, like they have a hard time concentrating. There can also be sadness, loneliness, and feelings of overwhelm as well. Okay. If somebody has too much pitta or fire, the qualities of the pitta and fire is again, it's hot, it's intense, and it's spreading like a fire. Okay. So physically, people will have inflammation, which tends to spread. It's hot, it's intense, it's red, or something like a rupture, like an accident or injury. Okay. Then mentally, emotionally, people with too much pitta or fire will tend to display irritation, anger, rigidity, and kind of like a controlling nature of themselves and others. Okay, and then kapha or earth, the qualities of kapha or earth is it's cold, it's wet, cloudy, static, or sticky, kind of like mud. You can think of earth is like, you know, water and, literally dirt. Okay, so you get like a kind of a muddy quality to it. So physically, when people have too much coffee, there can be heaviness, there can be swelling or too much water or liquid fluid, stagnancy, but also growth because you build things with your. Okay. So mentally, emotionally, people with too much kapha or earth will feel stuck, stagnant. Sometimes that's good because they're usually fairly balanced. It's hard to throw them off, but sometimes though, if they're in a negative state, it's hard to get them out of it, pull them out of the mud, literally, mentally. Okay, they can tend towards a depression, kind of a heaviness of the mind. They can also experience like attachment or greed because again, it's actually a sticky building quality. They want to keep building material things, even on a mental emotional plane. Okay, so the thing is, when somebody has too much of any of these, too much vata, pitta, or kapha, what you can do is balance these energies by introducing the opposite qualities through color. Okay, so for example, vata is cold. So generally speaking, when somebody is in a vata state, you want to, have them surround themselves with warmer colors, like in their clothing, maybe in their like room. Maybe if they paint a wall or I don't know, the cushions on their couch or something like that. Okay, so that's a general idea, but we'll get into more details. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these vata, pitta, kapha, and again, we'll start with their qualities and then what colors are best to balance, offset the qualities. So again, vata or wind is cold, dry, and moving. So, for Vata people, like again, if we were talking about clothing, and I guess part of the reason why I even thought of this talk was because we're in the middle of autumn here where I live on the East Coast of the United States. So the trees are changing. Actually, this part of the United States is famous for the leaves changing, and people will travel here to see the leaves change. And also, people are starting to change their clothing from summer to autumn and winter and stuff like that. So there's a lot of change of that. And so, I don't know, at least I've been seeing on YouTube different videos on like, autumn colors, in your clothing and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, well, none of these people, that I've heard actually talk about Ayurvedic color theory. So I thought I'd just mention it because of the season, which we'll talk about seasons, and because, it's just a time of change in a lot of ways, at least where I'm living. So, so Vata or wind, again, cold, dry, moving. So the colors that are best for Vata when somebody has too much Vata are warm colors because it will offset the coldness. The other thing is they want grounded colors because they're always moving. They're always on the go. Like usually when I ask my patients, what they eat, if they basically tell me, well, I'm very busy with this, that, or whatever, and I just kind of grab whatever and keep it on the way, I already know that they're gonna. That's a very Vata way of eating. Okay. Um, so colors that are best for Vata or wind to warm them up and ground them are things like a medium red or orange, yellow, green, or beige color. Okay. Now you don't want anything too light or too dark. So if you get into like pastels and things like that, where it's like, mostly white with a little bit of green or a little bit of blue or something like that, that's going to be too light for wind, which is already a light thing. It's a light substance, so to speak. You also don't want to go too dark because it's like it's the wind is so influenced by any kind of change. You want to avoid extremes with vata. So you don't want to go like full on white because it's gonna be too light. You don't want to go full on like black or something like that because it's too intense. And that alone will either way, either too light or too dark, will actually intensify vata. What you want to bring to vata is like balance. So you want the middle ground. Okay. So you don't want anything too cool or cold. So things like black, dark brown, navy, gray, because again, they're just too cold and vata is already cold. And again, you don't want anything too stimulating. So anything too bright, anything too dark, anything too light. Again, you want the middle ground as far as vata is concerned. Then with pitta, so the qualities of pitta are fire, hot, intense, and kind of flashy, right? It tends to grab your attention, all that light and smoke and all this kind of stuff. And it's also clear. So the best way to balance with color, somebody who has too much pitta, is you want to introduce cool colors to balance the heat of fire. And you also want colors that are like balanced. So you want kind of a medium tone, like blue. You might do like light pink, or you might do white. Because Pitta is going to do the best with white because white's such as like a cooling, soothing color for the most part. Um, and then light pink, like, again, you're going to take that red, fiery color and then you're going to dilute it with a bunch of white to cool it down and make it more calming. And then blue is a cool color generally. Okay. Now, what you want to avoid with Pitta when somebody has too much Pitta is you want to avoid hot, like bright fire engine red and, red orange and, neon yellow. Anything like that, and anything that's intense. So anything like not just like bright red, but again, things like black because it's just too intense. And anything intense is going to increase pitta. Okay. The other thing is like it might be like in somebody's like a whole outfit or something like that. They might have white, like a white shirt and black pants or something like that. So there's going to be a lot of contrast because there's like such a shift between like white and black. But that alone will create kind of an intense pitta effect. Okay. So they want to do like maybe more like tonal kind of dressing, for example, or in the mid-range. It would help to balance pitta people out. Okay. Now, kapha or earth people, again, the qualities of kapha earth are cold, wet, stagnant, and cloudy. So these people, unlike vata and pitta, they're going to be better off with vibrant, strong, vibrant colors because they want the stimulation because kapha people tend to get stuck and tend to get heavy. So they want, they need like a little bit of a push or kick, to get them moving. So vibrant colors are great for kapha, or light colors because again, earth kapha tends to be heavy. So if you bring in, like lighter colors like pastels or something like that, um, uh, would help to, and not all the way white, but like, like a light green or light blue or something like that, like pink, light yellow. Those things, as long as they don't get too light, uh, will help to balance kapha. Okay, so what's not great for kapha in terms of colors is like the mid-range kind of bland, sometimes sort of muddy colors, like a mid to deeper brown or navy or gray, where, I mean, those colors tend to be kind of, dull and they tend to be kind of uh, heavy in a way. Yeah, so those are not going to be great for kapha folks. All right, so that's just the starting point. Let's see what else we have here. So here's kind of a visual way of putting together information we just started talking about, but maybe this will give a little bit more clarity. Okay, so what we have here is we kind of have a color chart. So moving from on the left side here, moving from left to right, we have lighter colors moving to darker colors. So you can see at the top you have like a light pink, and then you have like a pretty bright red, and then kind of a deeper red. And the same for green, the same for blue. Okay. Now moving from top to bottom, excuse me, the colors themselves are warmer to cooler. So like red is warmer than green and green is warmer than blue. Okay, so we have two different axes here of light to dark and then warm to cool. Okay, now if we look to the right, what are we looking at here? So we're looking at the overall kind of qualities of these different colors in this block of 9 here. Okay, so the top row of red is a warm color for sure. Okay, green is more of a warm color typically, unless it's like a really deep, like olive kind of color that has a lot of blue in it. And then blue generally is, for the most part, is a cool color. Okay. Now, if we look a little bit farther to the right here, we have lighter versus darker. So if we look at the top row of red squares here, these are warm colors. Who is going to benefit from warm colors? Well, potentially vata, but also kapha, because those are two cool doshas. Okay. Now, right in the middle of this warm scale or this red scale here. So on the left, we have like a light pink, and on the right, we have a deep red. Right in the middle, that bright red in the middle, this is the color that's going to be really great and really balancing for kapha, so people who have too much earth. Okay, so a medium, bright, warm color is going to be great for kapha. If they go too light, okay, that's it's actually going to support kapha, and if they go too dark, that's going to support kapha. Because either way, it's like too calming or kind of too heavy. Okay, so they want the bright, intense warmth. Okay, then if we move to the kind of green track here, the green level, this is again green's mostly a warm color, as long as it doesn't go too dark or too blue. Okay, now who's going to benefit the most from like a green type of color? Okay, well, vata, because it's warm. Okay, and the thing is, bright red, that might be great for kapha because kapha needs stimulation. Bright red might be too stimulating for vata. So if you got kind of a mid to maybe a slightly darker green tone, that would be great for vata. Now, if you go too light, that's going to be too light because wind, the vata wind is already too light. So you don't want colors that are too light pastel. That's going to be too much for vata. But if you go too dark, then you're going to lose your color and they're going to get heavy and it's going to kind of sink vata. Okay. So you want warm, mid, maybe slightly darker grounding, but like kind of like more ground, like enough depth to the color that it's grounding as opposed to like just sinking. There's a slight distinction there. Okay. Then this last row here of the blues, again, blues are cool. So again, cool colors, we would think of pitta to balance the fire of pitta. But like which blues, like in this range of light to dark blues, which ones would be best? Well, for pitta, you want the white, lighter, whiter pastel blues because that white is cooling and calming to balance the fire and intensity of pitta. Okay. So if you did like a light to like medium blue, that would work pretty well. If it was an intense blue, that's why like there's two circles here in this row of blue here. Is if it's like an intense blue, like maybe a cobalt blue or something like that, or like a neon blue, that might be too much for pitta. But if you shift it down a little bit where it's like more of like a, not exactly navy, most navy is going to be too dark, and again, intense potentially for pitta. But if you did like almost like a mid-tone jeans denim type blue, that would cool pitta down without being, again, too intense. If you did like black jeans or like super dark wash jeans, that's going to get more intense and that's going to push pitta a bit, even though it's a cool color. Okay, so this is important to know because, again, just because they're warm, like reds shades are warm, doesn't mean all of them are going to be super great for kapha. Or just because, all shades of blue are cool, doesn't mean that they're all going to be great for pitta if they're too bright or like too dark. Okay, because then you get the intensity again. Okay, so hopefully that gives you more nuance to the color theory here. Another kind of layer of information here regarding Ayurvedic color theory and balancing things out is that there's this notion of sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Okay. Now, if you watch my video, Spiritual Nutrition, I actually talked about sattva, rajas, and tamas from a nutritional standpoint because these concepts apply to food as well as colors. Okay. But if you haven't heard about it, sattvic is kind of this energy of like an ethereal, kind of spiritually motivated energy. Okay. So in general, when we're talking about colors, lighter colors, especially like white, pastels, and stuff like that, tend to be sattvic. So that's why you'll find like in some spiritual traditions, like some like lines of Kundalini and stuff like that, like people will dress all in white because they feel like that's like the most kind of ethereal, spiritual color. Okay. Then if we move to Rajasic here, and so again, the sattvic kind of energy is great for things like developing meditation, developing spiritual practice, developing a spiritual mind generally with everything you do in your life. Okay. Now the Rajasic quality, this is more of like an intense, fiery kind of goal orientation. Okay. Like developing things in the practical world and the mundane world. Um, that sort of thing. Okay. So this is more of like a practical goal-oriented energy. Now the thing is, before I get too far into this, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, we have all of us have all three of these all the time. Okay. And you need all three of them. So it's not like one is necessarily better than the other. We haven't gotten to tamasic yet, but like you need tamasic energy because if you don't have tamasic energy, you won't be able to sleep. Okay. If you don't have enough rajasic energy, maybe you're meditating all day long, but then you don't pay your bills. Okay. So, they're all important. Okay. But in terms of rajasicness and colors, again, we're talking about practical oriented colors. If you get brighter colors, so again, more chroma from a more artistic point of view, so more like full hue, like a truer hue, like rather than like a pastel or like a darker shade where they've added either white or black to the true color. These brighter colors are going to be stimulating and motivating and get people moving if they're not in terms of doing practical things. Okay. Now, in terms of tamasic energy, this last energy here in this triumvirate is more of like an inertia or like even like a detached energy. Okay, so when people get too tamasic, they may not have enough motivation to do any of the above, like do anything spiritual or do anything, kind of practical. Like they might just veg out in front of the TV or internet and, eat a lot of processed food and stuff like that, because all those things have a lot of tamasic energy. That's why when people, I don't know, myself included, sometimes I get home from a long day at work and then I just want to kind of veg out, like that. And so, you don't want to do too much of it, but you do want the ability to like slow down. Okay. So in general, tamasic colors are like darker colors, like black, dark brown, navy, that sort of thing, dark gray, because they kind of have this quality of like drawing energy to themselves and also kind of making, people and things disappear. Yeah. So again, we get into this like sort of inertia, not moving, detached energy here. Okay. So this is another layer of color theory regarding Ayurveda. Okay. So another layer of this color theory is that you might want to consider the season that you're in. Okay. So maybe you're a vata person, but it's like the middle of summer, or maybe you're a pitta person at the middle of winter. Then, what do you do? Okay, so um, where I live, we actually have four seasons. Okay, so we have fall, which tends to be cool and dry, so it's Vata season for us. And then we have winter, which is kind of a little bit of an overlap between Vata and Kapha. So it's cool and it's dry in the beginning, and then it starts to get wet in the spring, towards spring. And then we have a summer, which is hot and wet throughout the summer, hot and humid. Okay. So you may, depending on where you live, you might need to adjust this if your seasons are different. But in general, when you have cool and dry weather, this is going to increase vata. Even if you're not a vata person, or even if you don't have extra vata, everybody will start to increase vata over time. So, for example, I have patients that have moved to places like New Mexico where for most of the year it's cool and dry, especially when they move up into the mountains and they're in the ski regions and stuff like that. And even my kapha pitta people will start to develop vata symptoms because their environment and the weather there is so vata. Okay, so what you want to do if you're in a vata season, you might choose slightly warmer and more grounding colors. So again, mid-tone red, orange, yellow, tan, mid to light brown, that sort of thing, for grounding and warmth. Okay. Now, whenever you get into your cool and wet season, this is going to increase kapha for everybody. Okay. So again, once you get into kapha season, you want to choose warmer, brighter colors to be more stimulating. So maybe like, for example, Seattle. I'm thinking of Seattle. It rains a lot. They're known for a lot of rain, and it's cooler because they're more north. And that's the thing, is that's probably why, Starbucks coffee came out of there, because they needed stimulation. There's a lot of people, if they see that many dark, you know, cold, cloudy days, and myself included, like I know I can do like one or two, but if there's more than like, three cold, cloudy days, I start to just lose energy. I mean, a lot of us are affected by these things. So when you're in the kapha season, wherever you are, you want to choose warmer, brighter colors like bright red, pink, orange, yellow, green, to kind of offset this cuffiness of your environment and weather. Okay. Then whenever you get into your, hot and dry season, hot and wet, hot generally, because pitta is the only one that's hot. When you get into your hot season, you want to, this will increase pitta, especially when it's hot and wet, because pitta is hot and wet. If it's hot enough and dry enough, well, if it's hot and dry, you're going to increase both vata and pitta simultaneously. Okay. Pitta is hot and wet. So during this time, you want to choose cooler, lighter colors like light blue, light green, white, those sort of things, because those cooling colors and lighter colors are going to offset the fire and intensity of pitta. Okay. So there you go. What else do we have? Okay, and then what I did here is just like colorless. So you might find this kind of color list generally, like on the internet. But again, if you see this color list, it doesn't really capture the nuances that I just went through. Okay, but this is kind of like a handy thing to start off with potentially. Okay, so you can see the first column here, if we have vata, wind, autumn, more or less. So red, orange, yellow, green, those are warmer colors. Purple's good for balancing vata, and gold, okay, because these are warm colors. Um, Again, you want kind of a mid-tone or slightly darker tone to ground and warm up vata. And in the middle here for pitta, fire, summer, people, times, places, you are looking more at green, blue, purple, white, and silver because these are mostly cooling colors. What's nice about purple, you can see that's the only color that's in all three categories here, is purple is a fairly what we call tridosha color, where it can balance all three of these. Again, if it's a really dark, deep bluish purple, then that's not going to be so great for vata and kapha because it's going to get too cold. Okay, and it might even get too intense for pitta. Or if you get like a really, like reddish, almost magenta, that's not going to be so great for pitta. So even within purple, there's shades, right? But in general, green, blue, purple, white, and silver are going to help to balance pitta, fire, summer. And then at the end here for kapha, earth, and kind of that's a winter, spring time, red, orange, yellow, so warm colors, purple. Again, like a true balanced purple will be stimulating enough as long as it's not too dark or too light. And then gold and copper, warm metallic colors. Yeah. So what about black? I mean, black is not on this list. So again, black really isn't that great for balancing any of these, even though it's like a popular color in clothing, especially in like urban areas and things like that. But the thing is, black is so cold, it's not great for vata and kapha. It's also so intense, it's not great for pitta. So again, from a Ayurvedic color theory perspective, if you do black, you usually don't want to do too much of it because it will make you colder and more intense. So, maybe some people want that, and that's cool. But again, this is all just from this Ayurvedic perspective. All right, so that's it for today. Ayurvedic color theory. Hopefully, you've got some information here that's helpful to you in terms of bringing more balance to your life and yourself, maybe. So, thank you always for stopping by and listening to one of my talks. I appreciate all your support with my work and the channel. So, uh, just simply watching videos or liking, subscribing, sending a donation, sharing. I'm really amazed at how many people share these videos that I do on this channel. So I guess that means you feel like you want to share that value with other people. So that's really cool. I do have another YouTube channel. It's on Vedic astrology, so ancient Indian astrology. The name of that channel is Light Vedic Astrology if you're interested in that kind of thing. And I do have my online art gallery. And you can visit that at funded-goldman.fineartinamerica.com if you're interested in like uh, photography and photography-based gifts and stuff like that. Right. So, as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you find yeah, more balance and create more balance in your life. All right. So take good care, and until the next one, namaste.